哎，先不要吵我，我要录东西。
Yet herein I will imitate the sun, who doth permit the base contagious clouds to smother of his beauty from the world, that when he please again to be himself, being wanted, he may be more wondered at, by breaking through the foul and ugly mist of vapours that did seem to strangle him. If all the year were playing holidays, to sport would be as tedious as to work, but when they seldom come, they wish for it come, and nothing possesseth but rare accidents. Hi, I'm Sydney, and today I'm going to talk about Shakespeare as a fetish. The monologue I just read is the reason I fell in love with Shakespeare. No, it wasn't because of that rose that would possibly smell the same, even if you decide to call it broccoli. Shakespeare got me way beyond doting sonnets and classy medieval articulation. The beauty of Shakespeare is that he's almost surely capable of touching our hearts through various dimensions of context and thoughts, making it impossible to understand why, after centuries, he still manages to prosper in our culture. You will now question why this has anything to do with you, why this man, who is probably this close to being as omniscient as God himself, can possibly arouse interest in your perfectly functioning universe. I'm pretty sure I sound like a snarky lit major who's probably high on brownies, but for those who do not see a degree in English as a profession, the obsession for Shakespeare holds a bigger impact towards the world we live in than it seems like. Once your brain has learned how to comprehend the idea that Shakespeare's legacy has prospered well through the centuries, we may start to address the most obvious impacts shown in our everyday lives. Take a moment to think about some of the most amazing stories that have touched your hearts or cured you from a Blue Monday. Titanic, Avatar, She's the Man. Our whole knowledge base of quotable moments regarding the media is heavily based on the universe that Shakespeare has created for the world to live in. The top two grossing films are Titanic and Avatar, and both of them are based on that same story frame, Romeo and Juliet. We see poor penniless Jack and rich London socialite Rose fighting very hard to be with each other, regardless of class difference and family consent. And then we have a Na'vi princess, which is an alien with an injured ex-soldier, working together to save the universe, or just trying to be together with each other as lovers, even though they're part of two completely incompatible species. Our culture has learned to embrace itself over the reality that Shakespeare has constructed for us throughout the centuries. Not only are we constantly making various adaptations through art, literature, film, stage, and everything, but we're also embedding fragments of his philosophies in our lives. To take the story of Romeo and Juliet as example, people are willingly attracted towards a love story that contains hardships, where the two protagonists are forced to accept a challenge that is almost impossible to overcome despite the flaming love that they have for each other. So you see that it might not have been Shakespeare that came up with the whole star-crossed lovers concept, but it was he that turned this story into one of the most beautifully written versions and kept it popular and on for ages. This leads to another element in how Shakespeare's works are adored by those beyond literature majors. The timelessness in Shakespeare's works is based on the philosophy that he passes on, although people are not really able to understand his language right now. The example of Romeo and Juliet demonstrates how the plot of a story can still charm its audience in various forms. Furthermore, we can see how Helena's character in Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream gives a shout-out to feminism in the 1600s. You do me mischief, fie, Demetrius. Your wrongs do set a scandal on my sex. We cannot fight for love as men may do. We should be wooed, and we're not made to woo. Helena, in the midst of pursuing Demetrius' love, acknowledges that her actions as a woman, while being born as in her time, is viewed as shamefully inappropriate. Yet she still points out that there is a form of gender discrimination amongst the situation, which is something that modern women are fighting against today too. Besides a broad influence amongst the general public, the obsession for Shakespeare in terms of academic prospects takes Shakespeare as a fetish to a whole new different level of thought. To dig deeper into the issue, we need to see how Western culture Shakespeare is not only viewed as a form of art, but also a form of class. Incidentally, we can say since the study of Shakespeare has continuously existed amongst intellectuals, it is a symbolization of eternal classic concept that serves as the utmost token of wisdom and value. This is why people perceive the knowledge of Shakespeare as a form of upper-class behavior. And to further discuss the reason why intellectuals have this tension and passion for Shakespeare studies would require the help of Stephen Greenblatt. Shakespeare, as a fetish, can be perceived through Greenblatt's fetish towards a nostalgic world. This is because Greenblatt's constant yearning for a nostalgic world from Shakespeare has actually existed amongst generations of older people who have studied Shakespeare's work. This basically means that as the ages have evolved, our generation has learned to not base our studies on Shakespeare through new criticism or symbolic themes. However, an older generation, which is also called the aging undergrad, also feel that Shakespeare is a form of deity because they perceive his works through glasses of past and feel like that everything he has constructed is devised from the all-knowing God, bestowing reverence upon Shakespeare's works and believe that he is living through his works throughout the ages. Shakespeare, as a fetish, is a subject that can go as broad and as deep as one may wish. It can be a simple appreciation towards his literature works, his universally intriguing plots, or that moment of epiphany that you feel when one of his quotes basically voices out what you've been thinking for ages. Or it could just be how you, as a nerdy scholar, finds pleasure in all these little trinkets and themes that he bestows upon his work. Shakespeare has managed to make an impact on this world, and the fetishism for him is more than understandable. Fetishism for Shakespeare is more than just a preference for whether you like Hamlet or the Avengers or not, but it's actually seamlessly integrated into our daily values. To bring this speech to an end, I'd like to address on how my last conclusion on values is related to the opening monologue that I did previously in this speech. When I read Prince Hal's monologue, the idea of concealing one's worth through a disguise and waiting for the right moment to reveal seemed like a very universal key to success. And the fact that how rare accidents brought most amazement to those who receive it is also an idea that I believe that people will cherish in the 21st century. My point given is that Shakespeare, as a playwright, has entertained thousands and millions over the ages, but his philosophy towards life is truly timeless. And I, like many others, share the same form of obsession through his works. Shakespeare is a fetish because Shakespeare has managed to carry on his legacy, not only through time, but also through space as well. Thank you very much. This is the end of my speech, and I hope that this information has helped you realize and stay aware of how Shakespeare has possibly changed your life. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you.